just a few ideas about what you can do with stock. We use them a lot of times as a stock for beans. We always buy dry beans. I prefer to cook them from get-go. In other words, I don't soak them overnight. With a bean like this, it'll be about 3 hours. With lentils, it's maybe an hour. There's other varieties of lentils, however, that take a little less time than that. I tend to like my soups a little on the stewy side. Something else you can use stocks for, of course, is things like stuffing or anything really where you want to add a little extra oomph. We're going to do the lamb with lentil. It's a good complement. You wouldn't want to use a lamb for other kinds of beans or other kinds of, you don't use a lamb for a turkey stuffing. You know, you try to use a turkey or a chicken stock for that. Try to find flavors that complement, and again, that's really a personal choice. Your taste buds are your taste buds. Everybody's a little different. So we're just trying to show you the most simple things to do. We took our stock just as is, a little salt and the bones, and put it on the stove, and that's all we're really going to do with it. We'll add a couple little things later, but they'll just be small pieces. And in the meantime,
you had talked about using, the pieces of the vegetables that you can't use. If you were to make a vegetable stock, one of the things that we do here is when we buy fresh broccoli and, all those woody pieces that you can't use, or when we cook collards or kale and you cut the stems out of them, we'll take those pieces that typically would just go in the trash, and we chop them up and we put them in a Ziploc bag and we put them in the freezer until we have enough to make a vegetable stock. And then we'll make, just a vegetable stock out of those. Do the exact same thing. You obviously don't cook vegetables as long as you do cook other things. So those are just some ideas. You can definitely keep all of your scraps of your vegetables as long as they're clean and they're not, they don't have bugs on them, or they're not mashed and mangled and start to turn brown. That's one of the reasons we keep them in the freezers. We just keep gathering them until we have enough.
Yeah, and there's the old, a story about taking all the old material around the celery, the stone soup story, he had a day-old onion and he put it in the soup and he had this. So obviously you can use it for older things. We prefer to use things that are a little bit fresher, as stocks, especially if you're going to do it. Think about it, it's still something that's coming into your system, and if you're not so sure you'd want to eat it before you chop it up and throw it in the soup pot, you probably wouldn't want to throw it in the soup pot and eat it 2 days from now either. So always plug sort of the idea of the fresh things, and again, using, as my wife said, using the hard stems from the broccoli and the celery ends and things like that. Use the parts that are less desirable, but you can make a wonderful stock, especially the vegetables.
Yeah, they still have nutrients. It's just not, they may be too fibery for something you'd want to eat. Mm-hmm. And those work really well in beans too. What are some other beans that we use? You could just say it, what we normally keep in the house.
Black beans, navy beans, lentils. As I said, there's a lot of varieties of lentils. This is your stock. You'll find this at any grocer's less than $2 for a pound, and a pound is probably meal enough if you make a decent hearty soup out of it. Meal enough probably for, geez Louise, 2, 3, 4 days even. These are the kind of thing where you sort of get a little tired of it, so it's good to, put some of it in the freezer maybe, put some of it away, eat half of it, then you can break some more out. You don't have to make it all the time. Again, it can be a little time consuming. There's a lot of cutting and chopping involved. Again, 3 hours to cook something like this, about an hour to cook something like this. It takes a little time, and if you don't want to do that every week, there's an easy way out.
We generally keep navy beans. We keep black, they're called black beans or turtle beans. We keep those in the house. We keep, there's some kidney beans, some black beans. We usually, if we find a type of lentil that we is kind of hard to find, maybe some of the red ones, we do get those when we see them, just because it's you get things like that when you can. And typically I look for stuff when it's on sale. There's no and you can see these are all Safeway brand. There's no need to buy the really expensive bean, because a bean's a bean. You're going to cook it the same way anyway. So there's really no advantage to buying a name brand bean other than, you're buying a name brand bean.
And as I said, I don't believe, I could be technically wrong, I don't think any of these packages is more than $2. And
No.
you've got a solid basis for a meal in any kind of bean or legume to feed people for quite a few days.
Right.
So really stretching your dollar, beans are an excellent way. But again, just to remind you, it's sort of not the end-all and be-all in nutrition. It has some great stuff, some good proteins and things like that in it. But it still can't compete to meat.
Right.
Which is where the meat stocks come in.
Yeah, a lot of I heard of a vegetarian or a vegan actually talking about how she eats beans for the protein, and they do typically, beans will combine with a lot of grains. So like rice and beans tends to be a popular combination. That's because it creates a complete protein. So if you don't have access to meat, whether you're a vegan out of choice or vegan out of expense, the cost of meat's too much, you can combine meat or beans with rice, and it will give you a complete protein. The problem that I have with eating just beans is that it's not so much that it doesn't have enough protein, it's the ratio of carbs to protein. For me, especially if I added a grain with it, it would be, I like doing that, but it can, if you have blood sugar problems, the protein is not really quite enough to counteract the cost of the carbohydrates. So just, there's some, that's some like food chemistry for you. That one's free of charge. But like I said, if you're looking for a cheap protein and you can handle the carb load with it, beans are a great way to go. We do try to eat beans occasionally. We just have to be, I have to be really careful with the carbs that I put with it, just because they do have a pretty decent carb to protein ratio anyway.
And all over the Americas, the Caribbean, Central and South America, they all have a version of stew peas and rice, which I think is generally like a kidney bean and rice, but they can do other things. I know there's certain, I think Puerto Rican cultures do black beans as their with theirs, and then some of the Central and South American, I think, use kidney beans, and maybe some of the Caribbean. But again, just good, hearty, goes a long way and can feed a lot of people.
Right. Which is great if you're hosting a party like the Super Bowl. Yay!
Right.
Chili.
Right.
I mean, there's a reason why
There's a chili right there.
why beans are used quite extensively. We actually even take the black beans and we'll cook them like normal in the stock, some kind of meat stock, and then we'll actually make black bean burgers if we want something a little more substantial like that. Again, you're going back to the grains. If you're eating a burger, you're still getting the carbs. So, but beans are so incredibly flexible. There's the rice there. We keep it in a giant container. Honestly, if I could find beans that came in a size that I could put them in that, I would totally buy them that way. And we do keep them in the house, and I joke about not eating them as very much, but we actually do eat them quite a bit. And as long as your body will tolerate the carb to protein ratio, you're good to go. It's a great way to eat pretty cheap for a long time for a lot of people. So, all right, that's it for this episode, and we'll check back in with the stew or the stock when it's a little bit closer to ready.